The first thing I noticed after the wedding wasn't my ring. It was the quiet. Not the awkward kind, but the kind you hear when you finally stop living around other people's moods, when you're no longer measuring your words, bracing for a door to slam, waiting for love to turn into punishment. In our little apartment, nothing exploded. Nobody kept score. Nobody made you pay for taking up space. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Our place was small, but it was ours. A third-floor walk-up with scuffed stairs and a kitchen window that faced a brick wall. I'd make coffee barefoot while Eli, my husband, wrapped his arms around my waist. We'd bicker about where to put the couch and fall asleep without that tight knot of worry in my chest. That's the danger of peace. It makes you forget some people don't know how to live without control. Eli's mother, Marlene, had been around constantly since the engagement. Not loud, not openly cruel, nothing easy to name. She was sweet, almost aggressively sweet. The kind of woman who hugged you a beat too long and called you my girl as if a nickname could buy closeness. The kind who texted heart emojis and said she was praying for our marriage like she'd had a hand in building it. At first I told myself it was a gift. I didn't have a big family. Eli did. His relatives showed up with food, stories, and opinions, and I was trying to learn the language of that kind of love. Warm, loud, messy. So I went to Sunday dinners. I listened to childhood stories about Eli. I smiled at the way Marlene watched him, like she was looking at someone she still believed belonged to her. "You were a beautiful bride," she'd tell me, squeezing my hand. "Like something out of a magazine." Then she'd add, softer, "Eli has always had good taste." It should have been a compliment, but there was always a tiny twist, like the words had a second meaning tucked underneath. When Marlene said, "No one will ever love you like your mother," Eli would roll his eyes and say, "Lucky for me, I get both," and everyone would laugh, including me. Marlene had a key to our apartment. "For emergencies," Eli said, casual as if he were talking about smoke detectors. Marlene promised she'd never use it without asking. She even joked, "I don't want to walk in on anything that'll scar me." I laughed. I agreed. I didn't want to be difficult in the first season of our marriage, when everything still smelled like possibility. Then one afternoon I came home, and the air smelled like lemon cleaner. The counters gleamed. Our dish towels were folded into neat rectangles I hadn't made. A little vase of grocery store daisies sat on the table. Eli wasn't home yet. My stomach tightened anyway. When he walked in, I kept my voice light. "Did your mom come by today?" He blinked. "No, why?" I pointed at the kitchen. Eli frowned, then shrugged. "Maybe you cleaned and forgot." I knew I hadn't cleaned. I knew my exhaustion. But insisting on reality made me sound petty, so I swallowed it. I didn't want to fight over towels. Except the quiet began to feel watched. A photo moved. Shoes lined up. The closet door wasn't shut the way I left it. Each detail was tiny enough to deny, but together they formed a pattern. Someone was in our home, shaping it, correcting it, leaving before they could be seen. When I tried to mention it again, Eli's answers stayed gentle, but they closed the door. "You're stressed. It's nothing. Don't let my mom get under your skin." So I stopped talking. I started checking the lock twice. I told myself I was being dramatic, yet my body didn't believe the story my mind was trying to tell. Then, after another Sunday dinner, Marlene walked me to the door and adjusted the collar of my coat like I was her child instead of her son's wife. Her nails were pale pink. Her touch was gentle, but it held me in place. "You know," she said, smiling, "I still can't believe that dress fit you so perfectly." "Thank you," I said automatically. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's funny," she continued, voice light, "how some things end up on the wrong person just because the timing wasn't right." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She laughed softly, like I'd missed a harmless joke. "Oh, nothing, wedding thoughts, it was such a day." She kissed my cheek, perfume powdery and familiar, and opened the door as if she'd dismissed the whole moment. In the car, Eli hummed, relaxed. I stared out the window and tried to convince myself my skin wasn't crawling. When we got home, I reached into my wallet for my keys out of habit and froze. The spare key I kept tucked behind my license was gone. I emptied everything onto the counter until it was undeniable. An empty slot where security used to live. Upstairs, our bedroom closet door was slightly open, not fully latched, a thin dark line like a crack in a dam. And in my mind, Marlene's voice returned, soft as lace and sharp as glass. Some things end up on the wrong person. If you ask Eli what I was like during wedding planning, he'll tell you I was easy. He'll say I only cared about marrying him. But there was one thing I cared about with a fierce, almost superstitious intensity: the dress. Not because I wanted to look like a princess, because I wanted to feel like myself. Most of my life, I'd learned to stay small in rooms where love came with rules. My father was the one person who never asked me to shrink. He called me bright like it was a fact. When he died 2 years before I met Eli, I kept functioning, but something inside me dimmed. I stopped believing the future could be gentle. Then Eli showed up, steady, patient, the opposite of chaos. Loving him felt like stepping into warm light after years in a hallway. When he proposed, I didn't just say yes to a man. I said yes to a life that didn't hurt. The dress became a symbol of that promise. I didn't want trendy. I didn't want dramatic. I wanted something that looked like honesty, clean lines, soft fabric, the kind of elegance that doesn't beg for attention. I wanted to walk toward Eli feeling whole, not borrowed. I went shopping with my best friend, Nia, first. No family, no pressure. In the first boutique, I tried on a heavy lace gown with a skirt like a cloud. The stylist gasped as if applause could make it true. In the mirror, I looked pretty, sure, but it felt like I was wearing someone else's idea of a bride. Nia didn't lie to me. "It's beautiful," she said, careful, "but it's not you." The second shop was smaller, the kind of place that didn't need to sell you a dream because it respected reality. The owner studied me for a moment and handed me a garment bag. "Try this," she said. "Something about you tells me you'll like clean." When I stepped into the dress, my breath caught. It was ivory, not bright white. The bodice was structured but gentle, like it was holding me instead of squeezing me. The neckline framed my collarbones the way my dad used to say looked confident. The skirt fell in a soft sweep that moved when I moved, as if it understood my body. No glitter, no drama, just quiet grace. I climbed onto the little platform and stared at myself. For the first time since my father's funeral, my throat tightened with something that wasn't grief. It was permission. I pictured walking down the aisle without performing. I pictured Eli's face. I pictured my dad, wherever he was, seeing me choose a life that didn't demand I disappear. Nia covered her mouth, eyes shining. "That's it," she whispered. "That's you." I said yes before fear could talk me out of it. I signed the papers with shaking hands, like I was signing myself back into the world. That night, Eli lifted me off the ground when I told him. "I can't wait to see you," he said. "I'm so proud of you." His words warmed me. Marlene's later did the opposite. We were at his parents' house for dinner when Eli mentioned we'd found the dress. His mother, Marlene, paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Already," she said, eyebrows arched. "Without me." Eli laughed. "Mom, she went with Nia. It was just shopping." Marlene's smile stayed in place, but it didn't soften. "Well," she said, "I hope it's not something plain. You only get one wedding day." I kept my tone friendly. "It's simple, elegant." "Simple," she echoed, like the word tasted bitter. "I always imagined Eli's bride would be memorable." Eli didn't hear the edge. I tried to shrug it off, but Marlene leaned across the table and squeezed my hand. Her touch was gentle, and somehow that made it worse, like control wrapped in silk. "As long as it makes my son happy," she said. Then softer, "I would have loved to be there. These moments are precious." Guilt is a quiet thief. It steals boundaries and replaces them with apologies. So the next weekend, even though the dress was already ordered, I invited Marlene for a second look. I told myself it was kindness. I told myself inclusion would create peace. She arrived dressed like she was attending a board meeting. Sharp blazer, pearl earrings, lipstick that didn't smudge. She hugged me, complimented my hair, then spoke to the stylist like she was directing a project. "I want timeless," Marlene said, as if she were the bride. "Nothing dated, nothing cheap." The owner brought out a sample similar to mine. Marlene's eyes brightened too fast. She reached toward the fabric with fingers that hovered like she was afraid it might vanish. "Oh," she breathed, "this is what a wedding dress should be." Longing flashed across her face, raw, unfiltered, before the smile snapped back into place. When I tried the sample on again, Marlene circled me slowly. "Turn," she instructed. I turned, heat rising in my cheeks. I felt less like a woman and more like a mannequin. "It's flattering," she decided, "but you could add sparkle, a belt, something that draws attention. You don't want to look too modest." I met my own eyes in the mirror and held on to the certainty I'd felt with Nia. "It's perfect as it is," I said. Marlene's smile became sugar-sweet. "Of course," she agreed. "It's your day." Then she leaned in, close enough that I could smell her perfume, and whispered like we were sharing intimacy. "Our day, really. Families join. Traditions continue." Our day. The words were tiny, but they slid under my skin like a splinter. After that, Marlene inserted herself everywhere with the same gentleness. She offered to upgrade things we never asked to upgrade. She sent me photos of dresses she liked better, always followed by, "Just ideas, sweetheart." She corrected my choices with compliments attached, as if praise could disguise the push. Eli would rub my shoulder and say, "She means well. She's excited." And I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe love makes people better, not needier. I wanted to believe that if I gave enough grace, it would come back as respect. When the boutique called to say my actual dress had arrived, I picked it up alone. I held the garment bag like it contained something fragile and holy. At home, I unzipped it and stared for a long time. The fabric caught the light like a quiet promise. I pressed my palm to the bodice and whispered, "Dad, I'm doing it. I'm building something good." After the wedding, I couldn't box it up right away. It wasn't just fabric. It was proof that I'd survived my old life and stepped into a new one. So I hung it in our closet, high on the rod, inside its bag, behind Eli's suits. It felt safe there, inside our home, behind our locked door in the life we were beginning. I didn't understand yet how easily a lock becomes a suggestion when the wrong person believes what's inside belongs to her. Not yet, anyway. After we got back from the honeymoon, I expected life to widen, not tighten. We were supposed to settle into that soft newlywed rhythm everyone talks about: lazy dinners, inside jokes, quiet mornings where nothing is urgent except coffee and each other. And for a few days, it did feel like that. Eli would come up behind me while I cooked, kiss the side of my neck, and say, "I still can't believe you're my wife." I'd laugh, letting the word wife land like something warm. Then Marlene started showing up like a season that refused to end. It began in ways that were easy to call love. A casserole left at our door with a note. A text every morning, "Did you sleep well? I prayed for you." When I thanked her, she responded with more sweetness, more devotion, more presence. Soon she wasn't asking to stop by, she was announcing it. "I'm in the area," she'd say, already halfway here. "I'll just pop in for a second." The second stretched into an hour. The hour stretched into her opening cabinets, humming, talking as if she lived there. One Wednesday, I came home to a living room that wasn't mine anymore. The throw blanket was folded into a perfect square. My candles had been moved from the coffee table to a shelf above the TV. Even the couch cushions were flipped like she'd erased the imprint of our bodies. Marlene stood in the center of it all with a satisfied smile. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "This flows better." The words I wanted to say, "Please don't touch my things. Please don't treat my home like a project," felt sharp, and sharp felt rude. So I reached for polite instead. "It looks nice," I lied. When Eli got home, he shrugged at the changes as if furniture was the only thing being rearranged. "She's just helping," he said, kissing my forehead. "You know how she is." I was starting to. Marlene's help always came with a message underneath. "I know better. I belong here. I'm still the center." If I mentioned a recipe, she'd say, "Oh, Eli hates that." even if Eli had never said that. If Eli and I planned a quiet night, she suddenly needed him for a quick stop or a family tradition. And if he hesitated, she reached for the softest weapon in her arsenal, injury wrapped in worry. "My blood pressure's been acting up," she'd murmur. "But it's fine. Don't change your plans, I'll manage." I watched Eli's face change when she said things like that, the way responsibility snapped into place like a collar around his neck. He wasn't choosing her because he wanted to. He was choosing her because he'd been trained to. That training started to seep into our marriage. One afternoon, she showed up while I was folding laundry. She watched me for a minute, lips pursed, then reached into the basket and refolded one of Eli's shirts with quick, expert hands. "You're doing it the hard way," she said brightly. "Men like their collars crisp. A real wife learns that early." A real wife. It was said lightly, but it landed heavy, like there was a checklist somewhere, and I was failing it in front of the person holding the pen. I forced a laugh. Eli wears whatever I hand him. Marlene's smile thinned. "For now," she said. "In the beginning, men don't complain. Later, they notice everything." Her kindness was a trap with lace around it. If I reacted, I'd look ungrateful. If I stayed quiet, she'd keep tightening the string. I tried a boundary anyway. "Text before you come," I said once gently. Marlene's face fell like a curtain. "Oh," she breathed. "I didn't realize I was such a burden." "No, that's not. I'm just trying to be involved," she continued, voice thick with injury. "Some mothers get pushed out the moment their sons marry. I never thought Eli would do that to me." The guilt worked the way it always did. I apologized for a boundary I'd barely set. Later, Eli hugged me and said, "She's sensitive. She's afraid of losing me." As if my comfort was the price of her fear. The first time I told Eli, "I don't like how she talks to me," he frowned, genuinely confused. "She likes you," he insisted. "She calls you sweetheart." She calls me sweetheart while telling me what I'm supposed to be. He sighed the way people sigh when they think you're making something bigger than it is. "Babe," she's old school. Let it roll off. But it didn't roll off. It stayed. It collected. It became the background noise of my days, the sense that my home had an invisible audience. I began to notice details, the way you notice footsteps when you're alone at night. A mug in the sink that wasn't ours. The bathroom hand towel folded into a triangle I never made. The faint smell of Marlene's perfume lingering in the hallway when Eli swore she hadn't been there. The closet door not quite closed, as if someone had searched through hangers and left in a hurry. I started taking pictures of where things were, tiny proof for myself, because I was terrified of becoming the kind of woman people call paranoid. I started locking the bedroom door when I showered, then hatting myself for it. One evening, after Marlene left, I checked the kitchen drawer where we kept spare keys and found it slightly open. Nothing was missing, at least nothing I could see, but the sight of that drawer made my chest tighten. "What are you doing?" Eli asked from the couch. "Nothing," I said too fast. I didn't want to accuse. I didn't want to be the villain in a story where everyone else was just trying to help. So I swallowed my fear and tried to out-politeness the intrusion. Then, one Friday, my phone buzzed at noon, meeting canceled. I'd been running on caffeine and forced smiles all week. The sudden free afternoon felt like air. On impulse, I decided to go home early. I could surprise Eli with dinner plans, maybe reset the mood, maybe reclaim the space with something ordinary and sweet. As I gathered my things, I remembered a signed lease document Eli needed to submit by the next morning. I'd left it in our desk drawer at home. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I just drove. The closer I got to our building, the more my stomach tightened, as if my body knew before my mind did that I wasn't heading toward rest. I parked, climbed the stairs, and noticed something small but wrong. Our doormat wasn't straight. It was turned slightly, like someone's foot had caught it and not bothered to fix it. I reached into my bag for my keys, already imagining Eli's surprised smile. I told myself it was nothing, just pipes in the walls. Then I paused, hand on the knob, because from behind the door I heard a faint sound, fabric sliding, a hanger clicking softly against metal, like someone was inside our bedroom, moving through our clothes. The sound was so small I could have missed it, just a soft scrape, like fabric whispering against fabric, but it stopped me cold with my hand still on the knob. For a second I stood there, listening to the building breathe. The distant rattle of an elevator cable, someone's TV murmuring through a wall, my own pulse knocking in my ears. I told myself it was the neighbors. Old buildings settle, pipes talk, hangers shift when the heat kicks on. But the sound came again, clearer this time. Metal on metal, a careful click. Someone was inside my apartment. In that instant, my safe life felt paper-thin again. The thought didn't arrive like a scream. It arrived like a drop of ice water down my spine, silent, immediate, impossible to ignore. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could, the key turning with a soft grind that suddenly sounded too loud. When I pushed the door open, the familiar smell of our home should have wrapped around me: coffee, dish soap, Eli's cologne lingering on the sofa. Instead, I smelled perfume. Marlene's perfume. Powdery and sweet, like something trying to masquerade as comfort. "Eli," I called, keeping my voice light the way you do when you're afraid and you don't want to admit it. "Hey, I'm home early." No answer. The apartment looked normal at first glance. Shoes by the door, mail on the counter. Nothing overturned, nothing obviously wrong. That normalcy made my fear feel ridiculous, like I was about to embarrass myself by panicking over nothing. Then I noticed the smallest detail. Our hallway light was on. We never left it on during the day. Eli always turned it off out of habit. I always forgot, and he always teased me for it. Seeing it glowing in the afternoon felt like walking into a sentence that didn't make sense. Even the refrigerator hum sounded louder, like it was trying to cover for something. A coat I didn't recognize hung on the back of a chair, and my brain argued with itself. Maybe it was mine and I'd forgotten. Maybe Eli bought it. Maybe I was imagining the shape. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, and my thumb hovered over Eli's name, unsure whether to call or stay silent. I didn't want to sound crazy. I wanted to be a wife who trusted. "Eli," I tried again, louder, forcing cheer into the syllables. "Did you take off work?" Silence answered, thick and deliberate. My keys were still in my hand. The metal edges dug into my palm as I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The click of the latch sounded final, like I'd locked myself in with whatever was here. I considered turning around, leaving, calling Eli from the car. But I was already moving. Some stubborn part of me refused to be chased out of my own home by a feeling. I walked into the living room. The curtains were half drawn, letting in gray winter light. The couch pillows were aligned too neatly. A vase of daisies sat on the table, fresh, perky, wrong, Marlene's signature. I stared at them and a memory flashed, her hands folding our towels into triangles, her voice saying, "This flows better." Another faint sound drifted from upstairs. Not footsteps, something gentler, a rustle. My throat tightened. The stairs to the bedroom were short, just a few steps, but in that moment they felt like a bridge into another life. I climbed them slowly, each footfall careful, as if quiet could keep me safe. At the top, the air changed. Cooler, still. The way a room feels when someone is holding their breath inside it. "Hello," I said, and hated how thin it came out. No response, but the rustle stopped. That was worse than an answer. Because a house doesn't stop making noise just because you speak to it. People do. I stood frozen, staring down the short hallway. The bathroom door was open. The guest room door was closed. Our bedroom door was cracked, just enough for a sliver of darkness to show. I knew I'd closed it when I left that morning. I could see it in my mind, the gentle push, the quiet click. Now it waited like an eye half open. Maybe Eli was home and trying to surprise me, I told myself. Maybe he wanted to be romantic. Maybe he'd heard me and was hiding like some goofy game. The rationalizing was frantic, desperate, my mind throwing soft blankets over sharp truths. But my body didn't believe it. My body knew the difference between surprise and intrusion. My body knew that safety doesn't feel like this. I stepped toward the bedroom door. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. With every step, the hallway seemed to narrow, the walls closing in as if the house itself was trying to press me away. When I reached the door, I paused. I listened. Nothing. Not even breathing. I pushed the door open. The first thing I saw was sunlight on the bedspread. The second thing I saw was the closet door. It was open. Not wide open, like someone had left in a hurry. Open with intention, like a stage curtain pulled back to reveal something. For a second, my brain couldn't connect the open closet to danger. It just stared, trying to fit the image into an ordinary explanation. Eli grabbed a shirt. I forgot it was open. The cat, except we didn't have a cat. Then my eyes caught the garment bag, hanging on the inside rod. My dress. The bag was unzipped. The zipper tab hung down like a loose tongue, as if it had been speaking without me. A corner of ivory fabric spilled out, bright against the darkness of the closet. I took one step forward, and the room tilted. "No," I whispered, not to anyone but to the universe, to my own worst suspicion. I crossed the room without meaning to. My hand reached out and touched the fabric. It was cool, smooth, impossibly familiar. For a moment I saw myself at the boutique, Nia's shining eyes, my own breath catching in my throat. I heard Eli's voice, "I can't wait to see you." Then I heard another sound, right behind the closet door. A soft inhale. I froze. In the mirror across from the closet, movement flickered, white shifting, a silhouette where there shouldn't be one. My skin prickled, every hair on my arms rising. I turned my head slowly, like I was afraid a fast movement would shatter whatever fragile reality I was standing on. Someone was inside my closet. The doorframe blocked the full view, but I could see fabric moving, the unmistakable sweep of a skirt. It was as if my dress had come alive, as if the symbol of my new life had stood up and decided it didn't belong to me. My mouth went dry. My thoughts fragmented into sparks. Call 911. Run, scream, don't make a sound, don't give them time, don't let them touch you. But I couldn't do any of it. I was trapped between disbelief and the terrible proof in front of me. "Who's there?" I managed, and my voice cracked on the last word. For a beat, nothing happened. Then the figure shifted again, and the closet door opened wider. A hand appeared first, pale, manicured, with a wedding ring that wasn't mine. Then the person stepped forward, and the room filled with ivory. My wedding dress was on her body, fitted and familiar and horrifyingly wrong. The bodice pulled tight over her chest, the skirt fanning out around her legs as she stood in my closet like she'd been waiting for applause. Marlene turned toward me in white. For a heartbeat, my brain refused to translate what my eyes were seeing. Marlene, my mother-in-law, stood in my closet wearing my wedding dress as if it had always belonged to her. The ivory fabric hugged her torso in all the wrong places, pulled too tight at the seams, the zipper straining like it wanted to scream. The skirt spilled around her feet in a soft pool, bright against the shadowed carpet. She had my veil in one hand, lifted like a ribbon, and she was smiling at herself in the mirror as if she were the bride and the world was waiting to clap. Time did something cruel. It slowed down, stretched out, made every detail sharp. I saw the way she angled her chin, the way her fingers pinched the fabric at her waist, the way she turned her body slightly to catch the light. I heard the faint whisper of tulle as she moved, and beneath it, the tiny click of her nails against the beadless bodice, like she was tapping to see if it was real. My stomach rolled. A hot wave of nausea climbed up my throat, and for a second I thought I might actually throw up on the bedroom rug. My mouth tasted like pennies. My hands went cold while my face burned. That dress was supposed to hold one memory. The moment I stepped toward Eli and felt my father with me, somewhere just out of sight, proud and steady. It was supposed to smell like flowers and clean air and the soft sweat of joy. It was supposed to be mine. Now it was on her. It felt obscene, like walking in on someone reading your private diary out loud. Worse, it felt intimate in the most violating way. She was inside the one thing I had saved for myself. She was wearing my promise like a costume. She turned her head toward me slowly, and the smile on her face didn't break. Not even a flicker of guilt, not even surprise. If anything, her expression brightened like my presence completed the scene. "Oh," she said lightly, "you're home early." My voice wouldn't work. I tried to speak and only air came out. I gripped the doorframe as if the room might tilt and spill me out. Marlene took a small step forward, careful, as if she was afraid the hem might snag. "Do you like it?" she asked. The question hit me like a slap. Do you like it? As if this was a new blouse. As if she hadn't just reached into the most sacred part of my life and pulled it over her skin. What are you doing?" I finally managed. The words sounded thin, wrong, like they belonged to someone weaker. Marlene laughed, a soft, delighted sound. "I'm not doing anything terrible, sweetheart. Don't look at me like that." She smoothed her palm down the front of the bodice, slow and possessive. "I just wanted to see it properly. It's even prettier up close than I remembered." I stared at her hand. I could see the pressure of her palm through the fabric, the faint distortion of the satin. I imagined her sweat on it, her perfume soaking in, her skin against what had been against mine. "How did you get in?" I asked, because my mind needed something practical to hold on to. A lock, a key, a reason. Marlene lifted her eyebrows, almost amused. "Eli gave me a key, for emergencies." "This is not an emergency." Her smile cooled by a degree. "You'd be surprised what counts as an emergency in a marriage." The words slid into the room and sank there, heavy and ugly. I stepped closer without meaning to. The space between us felt charged, like the air before a storm. "Take it off," I said. Marlene's eyes narrowed just a little. "Why? It's fine, I'm not hurting it." "You're hurting me," I said, and the truth of it broke something open in my chest. For the first time, her expression shifted, not to remorse, to irritation, like I was complicating something simple. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said. "It's a dress." It's a dress, like the words could erase the aisle. The vows, the way I'd clung to that fabric when I missed my father so badly I could barely breathe. "It's my wedding dress," I said, my voice steadied on the second sentence. "It's not yours." Marlene tilted her head. "No," she agreed softly, "it isn't mine, but it represents my family now, my son, my name." She glanced at the mirror again, checking the fit, admiring herself. "And you know, I never got a day like yours, not really." The sentence was supposed to sound vulnerable. It was bait. I could hear it. Poor me, I missed out, so I deserve this. "I'm sorry," I said automatically, because politeness was my old survival skill. Then I caught myself. Anger surged, hot and clean. "No, actually I'm not. Whatever you didn't get doesn't give you the right to take from me." Marlene's lips pressed together. For a second, the sweetness drained away, and what was underneath looked older and harder. "You think I'm taking?" she asked. "I'm appreciating. I'm trying to understand what my son sees." "What my son sees," she repeated, like she was tasting the phrase. My heart stuttered. "This is not about Eli. This is about you crossing a boundary." She waved a hand, the veil fluttering like a flag. "Boundaries," she echoed. "That's the word everyone uses now when they want to be selfish." Selfish, the irony almost made me laugh. "I want you out of my closet," I said, "and out of my home." Marlene's eyes widened, offended. "Your home," she repeated. "Sweetheart, Eli lived in my home first. I raised him, I fed him, I stayed up nights when he was sick. I know him in ways you don't." Her voice grew warmer, as if she were explaining something to a child. "I'm not your enemy, I'm trying to help you keep him." Keep him. As if Eli were a prize that could slip from my fingers, unless she supervised. "You're not helping," I said. "You're invading." Marlene took another careful step, and the dress whispered. "I just needed to see what it felt like," she said, quieter now. "To stand in it, to look in the mirror and know how it is to be the woman he chose." Her gaze locked onto mine, and something in it made my skin prickle. It wasn't admiration, it was evaluation. "You think you're special because he put a ring on you," she continued. "But marriages are fragile. Women come and go, mothers don't." The room went very still. I thought about Eli in the kitchen that morning, kissing my forehead, trusting the world. I thought about the key she held, the way she carried access like a crown. I thought about how she said our day, really. "This is sick," I whispered. Marlene's nostrils flared. "Watch your mouth." "I don't know what you want from me," I said, my voice shaking now, "but you cannot do this. You cannot wear my life like it belongs to you." She stared at me for a long moment, and then her face softened into something almost tender. It was the same look she wore at family dinners when Eli made her laugh. Love on the surface, possession underneath. "You're young," she said. "You still believe love is enough." I opened my mouth, but she kept going, gentle as a knife. "Love doesn't make people better," she murmured. "It just shows you what they already are." My stomach dropped, because it sounded like a confession. Marlene lifted the veil and draped it over her hair, adjusting it with practiced hands. Then she turned slightly, as if presenting herself. "Look," she said, voice almost dreamy. "Doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it look right?" The question was insane, but the way she asked it was worse. She wasn't joking. She wasn't playing. She was auditioning reality. I felt something inside me crack like ice under a boot. "Take it off," I said again, louder. "Right now, or I'm calling Eli, or the police, I don't care which." Marlene's smile returned, slow and certain. She reached behind her back, fingers brushing the strained zipper as if she might obey. Instead, she leaned closer, close enough that her perfume flooded my lungs, close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. My hands shook, my ring clicked against my keys. I wanted to scream for Eli, for neighbors, for anyone, but shame glued my tongue down. I stared at the dress, and it felt like my wedding day was being erased. She spoke softly, like a secret meant only for me. "Don't worry," she whispered. "You won't be wearing it much longer." For a second after she said it, my mind went blank, like a screen going white from shock. "You won't be wearing it much longer." The words didn't just sting, they burrowed. They carried a future inside them, and that future tasted like ash. My throat tightened so hard I could barely swallow. I stared at Marlene's face, waiting for a laugh, a wink, any sign that she'd misspoken. But her eyes were calm, confident, as if she'd simply stated a fact. "What did you just say?" I asked. My voice came out low, almost too steady, like my body had decided panic would get me nowhere. Beneath that steadiness, though, everything inside me was shaking. I felt it in my fingertips, in my knees, in the thin line of air between us. Marlene smiled again, small, patient, the smile of someone who believes they're above consequences. "Oh, honey," she sighed. "Don't twist it into something ugly. I meant, styles change. People move on. It's not like you'll wear your wedding dress every day." A lie delivered like kindness. My stomach flipped. "That's not what you meant." She blinked, feigning surprise. "Now you're putting words in my mouth." There it was, the first layer. Deny what was obvious. Make me doubt my hearing. Make me feel foolish for trusting my own senses. I looked at her, really looked, and I saw the performance in her face. The gentle tilt of her head, the softened mouth, the careful breath like she was trying to appear wounded instead of caught. "You're standing in my closet," I said, each word separated like stepping stones. "In my dress. You broke into my home, and you just threatened me." Marlene's eyes widened as if I'd slapped her. "Threatened you," she repeated, breathy. "Sweetheart, I would never." I couldn't stop myself. A laugh escaped, sharp and disbelieving. "Then explain it. Explain why you're here. Explain why you're wearing it." Her gaze dropped to the bodice, and for the first time, I saw something flicker across her face. Something that might have been shame if it didn't vanish so quickly. "I told you," she said, voice softer. "I was curious, I wanted to see, that's all." "That's all," I echoed. "You call this curiosity." Marlene's shoulders rose and fell, a theatrical sigh. "You're making this bigger than it is. I thought you were at work. I wasn't planning to be caught." The casualness of it hit me harder than the dress itself. Not planning to be caught. As if the wrongdoing wasn't the point, only the risk of being seen. "You knew it was wrong," I said. I knew you, react, she corrected, and her tone sharpened for the first time. There's a difference. My hands curled into fists. Take it off. Marlene turned slightly, angling her body toward the mirror again, as if my demand was background noise. It's stuck, she said with a small laugh. The zipper's tight. This dress wasn't made for my shape. Something in me broke at that. At the way she spoke about my dress like it was an inconvenience. At the way she made herself the victim of fabric. I don't care if you have to cut it, I snapped. Get out of it. Marlene's eyes flashed. Don't raise your voice at me. I stared at her. I couldn't believe we were arguing about my tone while she stood in the wreckage of my boundaries. Where is Eli? I demanded. Does he know you're here? The question landed. Marlene's expression shifted, just enough. A tiny pause, a recalculation. Then her mouth softened, and her eyes glossed over as if she could summon tears on command. Oh, she whispered, suddenly fragile. You think I'm some monster. I didn't answer. My silence was the only honesty in the room. Marlene inhaled shakily, like she was trying to hold herself together. I've tried so hard, she said. I welcomed you, I included you, I've treated you like a daughter. You don't treat daughters like this. I don't know what else you want from me, she burst out, then immediately pressed a hand to her chest as if she'd surprised herself. The tears came fast, bright, practiced. Do you know how hard it is to watch your son change? There it was, not my hurt, not my violated home, her grief, her storyline. He's happy, I said, voice trembling now with rage. That's what you're supposed to want. Marlene shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. You don't understand, she whispered. When a woman marries a man, she takes him, and people act like mothers are supposed to smile and disappear. I felt something cold settle in my bones. This isn't about you disappearing. It's about you respecting us. Respect, she scoffed, and the tears stopped as quickly as they started, like a faucet turned off. Her face hardened. Respect is earned, and you... She looked me up and down slowly, the way she'd done in the boutique, evaluating. You walked in here thinking you're entitled to everything because you have a ring. I flinched as if she'd struck me, not because the words were new, but because she finally said the quiet part out loud. I am entitled, I said, voice rising, to safety in my own home. Marlene stepped closer. The skirt brushed the carpet with a soft whisper, like my wedding day dragging behind her. You're not safe because you're careless, she said. You think love will protect you. You think being chosen makes you untouchable. Her words felt rehearsed, like she'd been waiting to deliver them. Why are you doing this? I asked again, and this time my voice cracked. What do you want? For a moment, Marlene didn't answer. She stared at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then she exhaled, and when she spoke, her voice dropped into something quiet and sharp. I want my son back, she said. The sentence sucked the air out of the room. I swallowed hard. He's not an object. He is mine, she replied, and the conviction in her tone made my stomach twist. I raised him. I sacrificed for him. I built my life around him when his father couldn't be bothered. So that was it, the deeper motive, not love, ownership. A life shaped like a cage, and Eli was the lock. I'm his wife, I said, forcing the words through my clenched throat. That doesn't take him from you. Marlene laughed one short, humorless sound. You still think this is about titles? She stepped even closer until her perfume swallowed me. Let me tell you something about Eli, she said softly. He's loyal, he's a good man, and good men can be guided. My blood went cold. Guided how? Marlene's smile returned, slow and knowing. By the people who know how to push the right buttons. I felt dizzy, like the floor shifted under me. You're manipulating him. I'm protecting him, she corrected, from mistakes. And I'm the mistake. She didn't deny it. Her silence was the confession. I took a step back, shaking my head. This is insane. Marlene's face tightened, and then she did something that made my heart stumble. She reached down and lifted the veil again, smoothing it over her hair with a strange tenderness. You know what's funny, she said. When I look at myself like this, I can almost believe the world makes sense again, that the right woman gets the right life. My skin crawled. You need help. Marlene's eyes narrowed. And you need to learn your place. There it was, not sweetness, not concern. Control, plain and unwrapped. I'm calling Eli, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket with shaking fingers. Marlene didn't flinch. She didn't panic. She watched me like she already knew the outcome. I hesitated, thumb hovering over Eli's name, because something in her calm terrified me more than her anger. Go ahead, she said softly. Call him. I stared at her. You think he'll take your side? Marlene tilted her head, almost pitying. I think he'll choose peace, and peace has always meant me. My throat tightened. That's disgusting. Marlene's expression sharpened. You think you know him better than I do after a few months of romance, she snapped. I know his guilt. I know his loyalty. I know exactly what he does when someone cries in front of him. She stepped toward the dresser and picked up something small from the top. My wedding album, the one we'd been flipping through the night before. She thumbed through it with casual fingers, stopping on a photo of Eli kissing my forehead during the first dance. You look so sure, she murmured, and then her eyes lifted to mine. It's cute. I lunged forward and snatched the album from her hands. My fingers trembled so badly, I almost dropped it. Get out, I said, right now. Marlene's mouth curled. You want me out? Fine. She reached behind her back again, tugging at the zipper. It didn't move. She made a small sound of irritation. Help me. I stared at her, disgust rising. No. Her eyes flashed. Then it stays on. She said it like a threat, like she could keep wearing my dress until I broke. I clenched my jaw and forced myself forward, hands shaking, fingers brushing the zipper. The contact felt wrong, too intimate, too humiliating. I pulled carefully, trying not to tear anything. The zipper shifted a fraction, then stuck again. Marlene leaned close, her voice low. You know, she whispered, I warned Eli about you. My hands froze. What? Oh, yes, she said, almost cheerful again. I told him you were sensitive, that you'd make problems out of nothing, that you'd try to separate him from his family. She sighed. He didn't believe me at first, but now. Her eyes flicked to the dress, to the room, to my shaking hands. Now you're proving me right. My stomach dropped. You set this up. Marlene's smile was razor thin. I didn't set anything up. You walked in. You chose how to react. Her tone softened, false sympathy sliding back into place. But I will say this, Eli already told me he can't handle drama. He said he needs a wife who understands family comes first. My breath caught. He said that. Marlene shrugged, casual as poison, in so many words. I stared at her, and in that moment I realized the deepest betrayal wasn't just the dress. It was the story she was writing around me, one where I was unstable, ungrateful, the villain who couldn't accept love. And she was confident, because she'd been writing that story for a long time. My fingers let go of the zipper. I stepped back, phone still in my hand, and the room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were closing in. Marlene's voice dropped to a hush, intimate and deadly. Call him, she said. Let's see which version of you he believes. My thumb hovered over Eli's name like it weighed 100 pounds. For a second, I couldn't move. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I suddenly understood the trap Marlene had built. If I called him, I was stepping into a courtroom she'd already arranged. If I didn't, I was letting her keep control of the narrative. Either way, I was about to find out who my husband really was when love required courage. I hit call. It rang once, twice. Each ring stretched, long and hollow, as if the phone itself was reluctant to connect me to whatever came next. Marlene stood in my wedding dress, hands folded at her waist like a bride waiting at the altar. She watched my face, calm as stone. On the fourth ring, Eli answered. Hey, babe. Eli, I cut in, my voice shaking. Where are you? There was a pause. Still at work. Why? Is everything okay? Everything okay. The phrase felt like a joke. My eyes stung, but I forced my words out clean. Your mom is in our apartment. Another pause. I could hear office noise behind him, muffled voices, a keyboard clicking. What? Why would she be there? Because she has a key, I said, and she's in our bedroom. A beat of silence. Then Eli exhaled, like the conversation was already exhausting him. Okay, what's going on? Marlene's mouth twitched. Not a smile, something sharper. She lifted her chin as if she wanted Eli to hear her through the phone. She's wearing my wedding dress, I said. The words came out fast and ugly, like vomiting. For a second I expected Eli to gasp, to curse, to go quiet in disbelief. Instead, he made a sound, half laugh, half breath. Wait, what? I'm not joking, I snapped, and my voice broke on the last syllable. She's wearing it, right now, in our closet. Eli's silence was different this time. Longer. Unsteady. Like his mind was trying to reject the image because it didn't fit the version of his mother he needed to believe in. Then he said carefully, Are you sure? That question landed like a hand on my throat. Are you sure? I repeated, staring at him through the phone as if he could see the room. Eli, I'm looking at her. Marlene's eyes glittered with satisfaction. Okay, Eli said, voice strained. Okay, just calm down, I'll come home. Now, I said, I need you here now. I have a meeting. I laughed, one sharp sound. Your mother is in my dress and you have a meeting. Babe, he started. No, I said, and my hands were trembling so hard the phone almost slipped. Do, baby me, come home. He exhaled again, a sigh that sounded like he was bracing for inconvenience instead of betrayal. I'll leave, he said. Just, please don't do anything rash. Rash? My stomach dropped. I stared at Marlene, and she looked almost serene, as if Eli's words were exactly what she'd predicted. I hung up without answering. The silence after the call was thick, pulsing. Marlene tilted her head, studying me like she was watching a test in progress. Well, she asked softly, did you tell him? My voice came out flat. He's coming. Marlene's smile widened. Good. I wanted to scream. Instead, I backed away until my hips hit the edge of the bed. I sat down because my legs couldn't hold me anymore. The room smelled like her perfume and my humiliation. Marlene adjusted the veil again, preening. He'll be upset, she said, almost conversational. But not at me. He'll be upset that you're upset. I clenched my jaw. You don't know that. She shrugged, the dress whispering. I know my son. Minutes crawled by. I stared at the closet, at the unzipped garment bag, at the empty space where my symbol of safety had been, and I felt a strange numbness spreading through me. Like my body was trying to protect me by shutting down. In that numbness, memories flickered, small moments that suddenly looked different. Eli answering his mother's calls during our honeymoon. Eli canceling plans because she sounded lonely. Eli telling me, she doesn't mean it like that, whenever Marlene cut me with a sweet smile. I'd thought those were harmless compromises. Now they looked like rehearsals. When the front door finally opened downstairs, my heart punched against my ribs. I heard Eli's footsteps, quick and heavy. He called my name, worried. In here, I shouted. He appeared in the doorway a second later, breathless, tie loosened, eyes wide. For a flash of relief, my chest softened. He looked scared, like he understood something was wrong. Then he saw Marlene. His face changed, like someone flicked a switch. Confusion, disbelief, and then something I hated, embarrassment. Mom, he said, what the hell? Marlene turned toward him slowly, veil floating, dress gleaming. Eli, she said, and her voice softened into pure mother. Honey, don't yell. Eli stared at her, mouth slightly open. Why are you wearing that? Marlene's eyes shimmered. Tears formed instantly, as if she'd been holding them back all day. I didn't mean any harm, she whispered. I wanted to see it. I wanted to feel what your wedding day felt like for her. She gestured toward me, making it sound like she'd done me a favor. It was just a moment. Eli's gaze flicked to me. Is that true? He asked. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Is that true? I echoed. Eli, she broke into our home, she threatened me. Marlene gasped as if I'd stabbed her. Threatened you, she cried. Eli, I would never, I said nothing like that. I watched Eli's eyes dart between us, and in that darting I saw the child in him, the boy trained to calm storms, to keep his mother from crying, to fix discomfort as fast as possible. What did she say? He asked, voice tight. Marlene wiped a tear with the back of her hand. I said she won't wear it much, she sniffed. I meant because it's a wedding dress, I was joking. She looked at me with wounded innocence. She's twisting it, Eli. She's been so tense lately. My mouth went dry. You told me I wouldn't be wearing it much longer, I said slowly. You said it like a warning. Eli pinched the bridge of his nose as if he had a headache. Okay, he said, voice strained. Everyone just stop. Mom, take the dress off, please. Marlene's shoulders shook. I tried, she sobbed. It's stuck. I'm humiliated. I can't believe you're looking at me like I'm some villain. Eli moved toward her instinctively. Not to me, to her. He reached behind her back, fingers fumbling at the zipper. The intimacy of that, my husband undressing his mother from my wedding dress, made bile rise in my throat. I turned my face away, but the sound of fabric shifting filled the room. Why did you come here? Eli asked, gentler now, like he was coaxing a frightened animal. Marlene sniffed. I wanted to drop off food, she lied smoothly. And I saw the garment bag, it was right there, and I thought it would be harmless. It was in the back of the closet, I snapped. Behind your suits, she went looking. Eli paused, hands still at the zipper. His eyes flicked to me with a warning, quiet pleading, please, don't make it worse. That look hurt more than anything Marlene had said, because it wasn't about truth. It was about peace. Can you not write now? Eli said under his breath. We'll talk later. Later, after the story had been rewritten, after Marlene had dried her tears and turned herself into the victim, after I'd been labeled dramatic. My chest tightened. Eli, she used her key without asking. She came into our bedroom, Babe, he interrupted, voice low and strained. I know this is upsetting, but can we handle it calmly? Calmly? The word hit like ice. I stared at him. Calmly, I repeated. You want me to be calm while your mother wears my wedding dress. Eli's jaw clenched. I'm not saying it's okay, he insisted. I'm saying she's here now, she's crying, the dress is stuck. We need to fix this without making it a war. A war, as if the war hadn't already been declared the moment she unlocked our door. Marlene made a small sobbing sound. I knew she'd do this, she whispered, just loud enough. I knew she'd turn you against me. Eli flinched. His hands left the zipper. He looked at her, then at me, torn in half by the oldest tug in his life. I waited. My whole body waited. This was the moment, simple, brutal, clarifying. A husband either protects his wife or protects his comfort. Eli looked at me and said the words that finally made everything inside me go quiet. Can you just be the bigger person? Something in my chest collapsed, not loudly, not dramatically, just gone. Because in that sentence, I understood. This wasn't about fabric. It wasn't about a dress that could be cleaned or replaced. It was about whether my marriage was a place I could be safe, whether I was chosen, whether my pain mattered more than his need to keep the peace. And standing there in the wreckage of my wedding day, watching my husband comfort the woman who'd violated me, I realized I might have married into a home where I would always come second. The dress came off eventually. It had to. Fabric gives way even when people don't. Eli got the zipper down in jerky. Impatient pulls while Marlene sniffled into her hands, acting like the tight seam was the real tragedy. When the bodice finally loosened, she stepped out of it with exaggerated care, as if she were rescuing something precious from danger, danger being me. She draped the dress over her arms, smoothing it like she was soothing a child, and for one horrifying second I thought she might refuse to hand it back. Instead, she held it out to Eli. Not to me. Eli took it automatically, like the exchange was natural. Like I wasn't standing right there, shaking, the rightful owner of the thing that had been violated. I'm sorry, Marlene said, eyes red, voice trembling. I didn't think, I miss you, Eli. He rubbed her shoulder. I know, Mom. He didn't look at me when he said it. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. Something in me had gone past emotion and into a blank, cold clarity. I watched them like I was watching a scene through glass. Marlene's performance had worked. Eli was already prioritizing the comfort of the person who hurt me. When Marlene finally left, after insisting she was too upset to drive, until Eli promised to call her later, I stood in our bedroom staring at the garment bag. Eli hung the dress back up like you might hang up a coat after rain. He didn't unzip it to check for stains. He didn't ask if I was okay. He turned toward me with that strained, peacekeeping expression. Can we not blow this up? He said softly. Please. Blow this up, as if I'd set the fire. I didn't answer. I walked into the bathroom and locked the door, not because I thought Eli would come in, but because the lock was the only thing in that apartment that still felt honest. That night, Eli slept like a man who believed a problem ends when he stops talking about it. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own thoughts rearrange themselves around a new truth. I wasn't just dealing with Marlene. I was dealing with the version of Eli that still belonged to her. By morning, the fallout had already spread. My phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m., a call from Eli's aunt, Denise. I let it go to voicemail. Then his sister, Lauren, then a cousin I'd met once at the wedding. The screen kept lighting up like a warning signal. I opened a text from Lauren first. Why would you humiliate Mom like that? She was crying all night. I stared at the words until they blurred. Humiliate, as if I'd forced Marlene into my dress. As if she hadn't chosen my closet, my key, my sacred thing. Another text came through from Denise. Families don't treat each other like enemies. You should apologize and move on. Move on, apologize. The script was already written, and in it I was the villain. Eli's phone rang nonstop too. He'd glance at the screen, tense, then ignore it for a while like he could outweight responsibility. Eventually, he answered one call in the kitchen, voice low. I heard Marlene's name, heard his soft, I know, heard the sigh of a man trying to keep both sides from breaking. When he hung up, he looked at me like he was bracing for impact. She's really hurt, he said. I laughed, but it didn't sound like humor. She's hurt. She feels like you attacked her, he continued, choosing his words carefully. She said you were screaming. I wasn't screaming, I said. I was standing there while she wore my wedding dress. Eli's jaw tightened. I'm not saying what she did was okay. But you're saying my reaction was. He exhaled, frustrated, and that frustration was directed at me, at the inconvenience of my pain. I'm saying we need to handle this like adults, he said. Not like we're tearing the family apart. There it was again. Family as a wall I wasn't allowed to touch, even when it crushed me. That afternoon, Marlene sent a message in the family group chat, one I hadn't even known existed until my phone buzzed and buzzed and buzzed. Marlene, I'm sorry for yesterday. I made a silly mistake and got shamed in my own son's home. I only wanted to feel included. Please pray for peace in our family. A silly mistake. My stomach turned. The words were gentle, innocent, designed for sympathy. And the phrase my son's home wasn't an accident. It erased me in 6 characters. The replies poured in. It's okay, Marlene. You did nothing wrong. Some women don't understand what mothers sacrifice. Praying for you. Stay strong. I felt my face heat with a familiar kind of shame. The shame of being outnumbered, misunderstood, rewritten. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Every version sounded defensive. Every version sounded like the dramatic wife they were already painting me as. Eli watched me from the doorway, arms crossed. Don't respond, he warned. It'll just make it worse. Worse for whom, I wanted to ask. For me or for him? The mob didn't need facts. It needed a story that kept Marlene central and me disposable. Over the next few days, the pressure became constant. Calls, messages, unannounced visits to check on Eli. The word apology floated in every conversation like a required offering. Even when they pretended to care about me, the care had strings. Denise called again, and this time I answered, because part of me still believed in reason. Her voice came through warm and tight. "Honey," she said, "I'm just trying to help. You're new to this family. We do things differently." "Differently," I repeated. "We don't air private things," she continued. "And Marlene has been through a lot. She's sensitive. You should be gentle with her." I stared out the window at the brick wall across from our kitchen, feeling trapped. "What about being gentle with me?" I asked quietly. Denise made a small sound like she hadn't expected that question. "Well, you're young, you'll bounce back, but a mother's heart," she sighed. "It's fragile." Fragile, like glass, like something everyone tiptoed around. After I hung up, Eli found me in the bedroom staring at the garment bag. He looked uncomfortable, like the dress was a witness neither of us could silence. "Maybe just apologize for how it went down," he said. "Not for what you feel, just for the tone." The tone, always the tone, never the violation. I turned toward him slowly. "Do you want me to lie?" I asked. "Do you want me to tell your mom she didn't do anything wrong so she'll stop punishing you?" Eli flinched. "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that," I said, and my voice shook with a truth I could no longer soften. "Your family isn't asking for peace. They're asking for control." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence again, his oldest instinct. That was when I started looking backward instead of forward. I replayed moments I'd dismissed. Marlene accidentally scheduling a family dinner on the night Eli planned to take me out for my birthday. Marlene insisting she should approve our apartment choice because she knew neighborhoods. Marlene crying the first time Eli spent Christmas morning with my side of the family, then calling it abandonment. The way she used emotion like currency, spending tears to buy obedience. None of it had been isolated. It had been training. For Eli, for me, for the family. I went into the kitchen drawer where we kept spare keys, the one that had been slightly open. My hands were steady now, almost calm. I lifted everything out, batteries, old receipts, a tape measure, until I reached the bottom. There, tucked under a folded napkin, was a small silver key I'd never seen before. My breath caught. Our spare key was on a plain brass ring. This one was newer, shinier, on a little plastic tag with faded writing. I picked it up and flipped it over. On the tag, in Marlene's handwriting, neat, confident, were two words. "Bride closet." The room went very still. I stood there with the key in my palm, and suddenly the whole story snapped into focus. Not just what she'd done, but how planned it was, how deliberate, how long she'd been preparing to step into my life and claim it. And for the first time since I walked through that door, I wasn't just hurt. I was furious with clarity. Because evidence doesn't argue. Evidence doesn't get told to be the bigger person. Evidence doesn't care about family scripts. Evidence tells the truth, even when people don't. I held the key for a long time, like it might burn a hole through my skin. Bride closet. Two words in Marlene's handwriting, neat and certain, as if my life was a file folder she could label and access whenever she pleased. My first instinct was to laugh, one of those bitter laughs that comes when your brain can't decide whether to scream or collapse. My second instinct was to put it back, shut the drawer, pretend I hadn't found it. That's what I'd been doing for months, really. Finding proof in small pieces and then swallowing it down because numbing it felt too dangerous. But the key was real, and the moment I admitted that, something else became real too. I was standing at the edge of my own life, and I had to decide whether I was going to keep shrinking to fit into someone else's family story, or finally take up the space I'd earned. I walked into the bedroom and stared at the garment bag again. My dress hung there like a ghost of joy. I could still feel the fabric on my skin from the wedding day, still hear Eli's vows, still see his eyes shining like he couldn't believe he'd been allowed to love me. The heartbreak wasn't that he'd stopped loving me. It was that he loved me in a way that still had conditions. Be patient, be calm, be the bigger person. Be quiet so he could keep peace with a woman who refused to let him be free. Eli came home early that evening, with the same careful expression he'd worn since the closet incident, like he was walking through a room full of glass. "You okay?" he asked, standing in the doorway. I almost said yes. The word rose automatically, the way it always had in my old life. Yes meant smooth waters. Yes meant no conflict. Yes meant you can't blame me for making this hard. Then I looked down at the key in my palm. "No," I said, "I'm not." Eli's shoulders sagged. "Babe, I know this is a lot." "A lot," I repeated softly. "You still don't understand what this is." He came closer, hands lifted as if approaching a frightened animal. "I'm trying. I don't want this to tear us apart." The word us should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like a rope, something he could pull to keep me from stepping away. I didn't answer right away. I sat at the edge of the bed and let the silence stretch, because I wanted him to feel the weight for once. I wanted him to sit inside the discomfort instead of rushing to fix it by making me smaller. "I found something," I said finally. Eli's eyes narrowed. "What?" I held out the key. He stared at it, confused, then took it from my hand. He turned it over and read the tag. I watched his face change, first confusion, then a flicker of alarm, then something like denial trying to close over it. "What is this?" he asked, voice tight. "It was in our kitchen drawer," I said, "under a napkin, and that handwriting is your mother." Eli swallowed. Maybe she labeled it for something else. "Bride closet," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Eli, she labeled a key to our apartment bride closet." His jaw clenched. He stared at the key like it might speak on his behalf. And suddenly I saw it, clear as day, the choice he was making in real time. He wasn't deciding whether his mother was wrong. That was obvious. He was deciding what it would cost him to admit it. Because admitting it meant he'd have to do something. It meant his childhood training wouldn't work anymore. He looked up at me, eyes shiny, and for a second I saw the boy in him, young, exhausted, afraid of his mother's tears. "I didn't know," he whispered. I believed him. That was the cruelest part. I believed he didn't know she'd gone this far. But I also knew something else. Even without knowing, he'd been building a world where she could. "Eli," I said, voice softer now, "I need you to hear me. This isn't one weird moment. This is a pattern. Your mom doesn't see boundaries. She sees access. And you've been giving her access to me." Eli flinched. "That's not fair." "It is fair," I said, and my voice shook with the strain of telling the truth. "Because every time she crossed a line and you asked me to be calm, you taught her she could keep crossing it. Every time you told me to choose peace, you chose her comfort over my safety." His eyes filled. "I'm stuck," he admitted, and the honesty in it made my throat tighten. I nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm tired of being the one who pays for that." I stood up and walked to the closet. I didn't unzip the garment bag. I didn't touch the dress. I just stood there, facing it, letting my mind go somewhere it rarely went, the past I'd been running from. My first home hadn't been safe either. Not like this, but in the same invisible way. In my family, love was loud and conditional. You could be adored one day and punished the next for the crime of needing something. My father had been my refuge, but after he died, the old rules rushed back in. Don't upset anyone. Don't demand too much. Don't be difficult. Those rules had followed me into this marriage, like an unwanted inheritance. I'd tolerated small violations because that's what you do when you've been trained to survive. You learn to call pain normal. You learn to smile while your boundaries disappear. You learn to confuse endurance with love. And I'd been so grateful for Eli's gentleness that I'd accepted his weakness as kindness. But weakness isn't kindness when it leaves you unprotected. I turned back to him. "I have to make a choice," I said. Eli's face tightened with fear. "What kind of choice?" "The kind where I decide whether I'm going to keep living like this," I said. "Comfort versus self-respect, hope versus hard truth." He stepped toward me. "I can fix it," he said quickly, desperation spilling into his voice. "I'll talk to her, I'll set boundaries, just don't leave." The plea hit the old part of me that wanted to be needed, wanted to be the one who stayed. Wanted to believe love could solve anything if I just tried harder. But another fear rose stronger, the fear of being erased. Because staying without change wouldn't just hurt. It would hollow me out until I couldn't recognize myself. Eli, I said, I'm not asking you to love me. You already do that. I'm asking you to choose me. He stared at me, breathing hard. I am choosing you. Then prove it, I said. I walked to the kitchen table and grabbed a notepad. My hands were steady now, shock replaced by clarity. I wrote as if I was writing my own survival plan. Your mother's key gets returned to me tonight. No spare keys for her. No exceptions. She is not allowed in our home without my explicit permission. Ever. You will tell the family group chat the truth. She entered without asking, wore my dress, and threatened me. We start couples counseling this week. Not next month, this week. If any of this is negotiated, minimized, or ignored, I move out, temporarily or permanently. I slid the paper across the table to him. Eli stared at it like it was a legal document written in a foreign language. This is intense, he said. I held his gaze. So is what she did. He swallowed hard. If I tell the family, they'll hate me. I nodded once. And if you don't, you'll lose me. The words hung between us, heavy and clean. No drama, no yelling, just truth. Eli's eyes filled again. You're giving me an ultimatum. I'm giving you a chance, I corrected. An ultimatum is what happens when someone's already decided. I haven't decided yet. He looked down at the list, then at the key in his hand, then back at me. His face twisted like he was mourning something. His mother's approval, his role as the peacekeeper, the illusion that love never demands sacrifice. Finally, he nodded small, shaky. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll do it. I watched him, searching his eyes for certainty. I wanted to believe him. I did. But the key in my palm had taught me something love hadn't. Belief without proof is just another way to get hurt. So when Eli went to the drawer to collect all the spare keys, I didn't stop him. I didn't soften. I didn't rescue him from discomfort. I stood there, heart pounding, and for the first time in my marriage, I felt something that looked like strength. Not because I was fearless. Because I was finally more afraid of disappearing than being alone. Eli didn't sleep that night. Neither did I, but for different reasons. I lay on the edge of our bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to him move through the apartment like a man walking through a storm he'd pretended wasn't real. Cabinets opened softly. A drawer slid. Keys clinked together, small metal sounds that suddenly felt like the loudest thing in our marriage. Around 2:00 a.m., he sat on the couch with his head in his hands. I watched from the hallway for a moment, the way you watch someone you love and wonder if love will finally be enough to make them brave. He looked up when he sensed me there. His eyes were red. I hate this, he whispered. I hate it too, I said, but hating it isn't the same as fixing it. He nodded slowly, like each nod cost him something. Then he picked up his phone. I didn't tell him what to write. That was the point. If this was real, it couldn't be choreographed by me. It had to come from the part of him that chose integrity over comfort. His fingers hovered, then moved. When the message finally sent, I felt my stomach drop as if we'd stepped off a cliff together. He posted in the family group chat. Not a vague apology, not a request for peace, the truth. He wrote that Marlene entered our home without permission. Used the emergency key in a non-emergency, went into our bedroom, and put on my wedding dress. He wrote that she said something that sounded like a threat, and that regardless of intent, it was unacceptable. He wrote that he loved his mother, but he was married now, and his wife deserved safety, respect, and privacy. He ended with one sentence that made my throat tighten. If you can't respect my marriage, you don't get access to it. Silence followed, the kind of silence that comes right before a room explodes. Within minutes, the replies began. How could you say that about your mother? She was emotional. She didn't mean harm. Your wife is turning you against us. Eli's face tightened with every message. He didn't respond. He didn't defend himself with long explanations. He did something I'd never seen him do before. He let them be angry. The phone rang at 2:17. Marlene's name flashed on the screen like a flare. Eli looked at it, jaw clenched, then answered on speaker. "Eli," Marlene sobbed immediately. "How could you do this to me? You humiliated me in front of everyone." Eli's voice was hoarse but steady. "You humiliated yourself, Mom." The air left my lungs. I stared at him like I didn't recognize him. Marlene gasped, wounded. "I am your mother." "And I am her husband," Eli said, and he glanced at me when he spoke. "You crossed a line. You don't get to rewrite it." Marlene's sobs shifted, sharpening into anger. "She's poisoning you," she hissed. "I told you she would. She's trying to steal you." Eli closed his eyes like he was listening to an old song he'd finally learned was abusive. "No," he said quietly. "You've been trying to keep me." There was a pause on the line, small, stunned. Then Marlene's voice dropped, cold and tight. "So that's it," she said. "You choose her." Eli swallowed hard. "I choose my marriage." I expected Marlene to scream, to beg, to guilt him into collapse. Instead, she did something worse. She went silent, and in that silence I could feel the control slipping from her grasp. When she spoke again, her voice was flat. "Fine," she said. "Don't come crying to me when she leaves you." Eli's hand trembled as he ended the call. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Eli set his phone down and stared at the floor like he was grieving a version of his life that had been built on obedience. "I did it," he whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice shook. "You did." But the truth is, stepping up once isn't the same as changing. Over the next few weeks, Eli tried, really tried. He returned his mother's key and told her she would not have access again. He went to counseling with me, even when the sessions cracked him open in ways he didn't like. He listened without defending, learned to recognize guilt as a hook, learned that keeping peace had often meant sacrificing me. And Marlene, she disappeared at first. No calls, no texts, no gifts at the door, just silence like punishment. Then she resurfaced in subtle ways. A card sent to Eli alone. A voicemail that sounded sweet but carried a blade. "You used to be my good boy." A cousin randomly showing up to ask if we were okay, eyes darting like they were collecting data for her. Marlene still wanted access. She just changed strategies. The difference was, Eli finally saw it. One evening after counseling, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. "I didn't realize how much she controlled me," he admitted. "I thought I was being a good son." "And you can be," I said softly, "but not at the cost of being a good husband." He nodded, eyes wet. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for doubting you, for asking you to be the bigger person, for making you feel alone in our own home." The apology landed differently than all the others because it didn't ask me to move on quickly. It didn't ask me to comfort him. It simply owned what was true. Still, trust isn't rebuilt by one night of courage. It's rebuilt by 100 small choices made when nobody is watching. So I watched. And slowly, the air in our apartment changed again. The hallway light stayed off unless we turned it on. The closet door stayed shut. The quiet returned, not the fragile quiet of denial, but the honest quiet of boundaries holding. Marlene lost access, and with it, she lost her favorite language, control disguised as love. Some of the family stayed angry, some drifted away. A few apologized after the shock wore off and the truth settled in. The community that once felt like a mob became smaller. And in that smaller circle, I could breathe. Months later, on a calm Sunday morning, I took my wedding dress out of the closet. The garment bag felt lighter than it used to, not because the memory was less important, but because it belonged to me again. I hung it in front of the window and let the daylight touch it. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I simply looked. Then I did something I never expected. I put it on. Not for a ceremony, not for anyone's approval, not to be a bride in someone else's story. For me. I stood in the mirror, alone, and felt the fabric settle against my skin the way it had that first day in the boutique, like a quiet promise. I took a photo with my phone, not glamorous, not posed, just honest. Then I printed it and placed it in a frame on our dresser. A reminder that my life isn't a costume someone else can slip into. That love isn't proven by how much you tolerate. That peace is worthless if it requires your silence. Sometimes I still think about Marlene, about the tragedy of a woman who mistook control for closeness and lost her son because she couldn't let him be whole. Sometimes I still feel the sting of that moment in the closet. But it doesn't own me anymore. Because I kept what mattered, not just the dress. My dignity. And if you were in my shoes, if you walked into your home and saw someone wearing the symbol of your love like it belonged to them, what would you have done?